So today I'm here in the stunning Australian Alps, and whilst I make my way along the Rennix Trail, I have a heap of good news about our planet to tell you about to hopefully brighten up your day. And if you're new around here, my name is Dom and I create content highlighting good news about our planet, and these videos are pretty much a mixture between a hiking vlog and a news show. So settle in, sit back, relax, and I'll get to walking and find a good spot to get into our first story. So less than a year after the last dam was removed along Northern California's Klamath River, 2,000 acres of land that was once submerged under the reservoirs is bursting with life. For some quick context, in what became the largest river restoration program in America's history, 4 aging hydroelectric dams were removed along the Klamath River after almost half a century of tireless campaigning by local tribes. Since the early 1900s, the dams had choked the river, severely impacting water quality and most devastatingly blocking salmon migration, causing all the salmon above the dams to die out and the numbers below to plummet by 98%. However, by 2023, the concrete structures had deteriorated to the point where it was cheaper to demolish them than to fix them, so they were finally removed and the natural flow of the waterway was restored. But removing the dams was only phase 1. See, when the reservoirs drained, they exposed thousands of acres of soil that had been submerged for over a century, leaving it extremely vulnerable to erosion and weed invasion. But the Yurok tribe saw that challenge coming, and years before the first dam fell, tribe members scoured surrounding hillsides for locally adapted native seeds. In total, they gathered 3 million seeds, which through partnerships with seed farms were multiplied into a staggering 17 billion composed of 99 different species. And just 2 days after the drawdown began, Yurok crews were on site scattering seeds by hand in some places and with helicopters in others, and in the most erosion-prone spots they planted live plants to kickstart the recovery. Fast forward 12 months and the change is jaw-dropping. California poppies and western goldenrod carpet the floor, and Fremont cottonwoods are already standing 10 feet tall. Tribal ecologists say the new vegetation is now hardy enough to survive the intense Klamath summer, and many plants will produce their own seeds next year, kickstarting a self-sustaining cycle of recovery. Now this next restoration story probably couldn't be any more different to what's going on over in the Klamath Basin, as it's about how Mexico City's tree army is helping protect and restore the city's urban forest. Mexico City is one of the world's largest megacities with a population of over 20 million people, and the increasing need for space is placing its street trees at risk despite the significant benefits they offer. The city already battles flooding from torrential rains, struggles with poor air quality, and last year broke its all-time heat record twice, and as climate extremes intensify, every healthy street tree becomes more and more valuable. So to protect them from the increasing threats, Arturo Hernandez founded the Mexico City Tree Army, who fight to safeguard the green canopy and demonstrate that there are people willing to take to the streets with sledgehammers to ensure their survival. And as a perfect example of just that, the base of this tree was concreted over to create parking for food delivery motorbikes, which would have likely slowly killed it due to a lack of water and oxygen. But thankfully, however, the ground didn't stay sealed for long, as it was quickly reported to the army, who showed up with their sledgehammers and freed the tree. And in addition to their work defending trees, the army also helped plant new ones in underserved communities lacking green cover, where the extra shade, cleaner air, and better water absorption is needed the most. And I've got some more good news coming out of Mexico regarding its work restoring 100,000 hectares of seabird habitat across 100 islands. So you might not know this, but Mexico's islands are home to roughly a third of all seabird species, but the introduction of invasive animals has wreaked havoc on their ecosystems. Globally, seabirds have declined by about 70% since the 1950s, and in Mexico in particular, 16 of the last 20 seabird extinctions were driven by invasive species. But so to reverse the trend, Mexico launched a plan to restore 100 islands by 2030, which in turn would protect habitat for over 300 native species. So far, 60 invasive species populations have been eradicated, and to make sure they aren't accidentally brought back, the government has enforced some strict biosecurity and monitoring measures. And the comeback so far has been glorious. On Guadalupe Island, the removal of rabbits, donkeys and horses saw the number of juvenile trees from 3 species explode from 0 to over 150,000, and 6 plant species that were thought to have been extinct have since re-emerged as a result of the decreased grazing. Interestingly, on some islands where the pests had been long removed and the vegetation was recovering, seabirds still weren't returning to them, leading scientists to suspect that it was likely because they couldn't see or hear any of their own kind on them. So they launched social attraction programs involving things like wooden decoys and loudspeakers to signal to birds in the area that the islands are safe for them to return to, and it worked. 85% of the colonies that had abandoned their homes have now come back, and the efforts have even attracted 12 new species to begin nesting on the islands. And as all of that success comes from restoring just over half of their target, I can't even imagine what else they'll achieve on their road to 100,000 hectares. Now, despite growing up only about 2 hours away from here, I pretty much never came to the snow as a kid, so I'm not sure how all of this, and more importantly, all of that compares to a normal year. But to me, this is absolutely incredible. This is, much more than I expected. You probably heard that New York introduced a congestion fee, but you might not have known that despite pushback and legal threats from people like Trump, it's already looking like a big success. For some context, last year New York ranked as the second worst city on the planet for traffic congestion, and all that idling not only wastes hours of commuters' lives, but obviously also pumps out clouds of pollution. And so similar to the low emission zones in London and Spain, from January this year, New York began charging most vehicles that enter the heart of Manhattan a $9 fee. And just quickly, in response to a few comments that I got over on Instagram when I posted about this, to make the fee fairer for disadvantaged residents, some can apply for a 50% discount and tax credits, but there's also entire exemptions for people who can't use public transport for health reasons. But so within just 4 months of the fee being introduced, an average of 76,000 fewer cars were entering the area each day. And as a result, one express bus route is now 34% faster, fire response times have slightly improved, and with less delays, the initiative has also allowed children to be able to spend more time in the classroom rather than sitting on a bus in traffic. Before the program started, there were concerns that it would simply just push traffic to other areas, but so far the data shows that that is not the case at all, and some places have actually reported a substantial decrease in crashes, likely due to less erratic driving. And in addition to those benefits, the revenue generated by the $9 fee is being utilised to help finance $15 billion worth of local public transport projects, such as subway line extensions, purchasing more electric buses, and making stations more accessible. Back here in Australia, the non-profit Australian Wildlife Conservancy is developing a smart gate to allow endangered mammals to move between the fences of protected areas whilst keeping cats and foxes at bay. In Australia, most of our native small mammals, like the marla for example, are extremely susceptible to fox and cat predation, which means many of them are currently reliant on massive fence sanctuaries like this for survival. However, one of the biggest challenges conservationists face in doing so is that due to the lack of predators, the populations inside can quickly reach capacity, leading to them utilising things like fertility control or relocation to keep the ecosystem in balance. But another option that AWC are exploring is to allow the individuals to leave the fenced areas by themselves when competition gets too much. And so to let them do so while mitigating the risk of a fox or cat sneaking in behind them, they've developed this two-door smart gate which only opens if the target species is inside. At the moment, the gate is said to only allow woylies or brush-tailed bettongs to pass through, but it could also be used for various other species, and for example, it could be trained to not let any mums with offspring at foot leave the safety of the sanctuary. As for the effectiveness, during a 17-night trial on an internal fence at the Karakamia Wildlife Sanctuary, the gate facilitated 25 successful woylie crossings and 0 of non-target species. And just quickly, I did reach out to the AWC to ask a couple questions regarding whether they have any concerns that the predators might just camp out this gate and wait for an easy meal, but also to see whether they do any predator control outside of the fenced area in the region, like the surrounding landscape where the animals will be running into. And I haven't been able to get a response yet, but when I do, I'll drop it either down in the comments or description. And that goes for all of the stories that I post over on Instagram. While I catch my breath because this hike is taking it out of me. That goes for any of the stories that I put up over there, and if it's one that I plan on including in one of these good news hikes, I'll do some more research and include the response in its own segment. Now, this next story is about an EU court that supported a country's move to crack down on bottom trawling in its protected waters, which you'd think would be a no-brainer, right? If you aren't familiar, bottom trawling involves dragging massive nets along the seafloor which capture everything in their path and flatten entire ecosystems whilst doing so. And over the past few months, I came across some articles where countries like Spain were being taken to court for allowing bottom trawling to go on in their protected areas, which honestly blew my mind because surely such a destructive practice would be an automatic no-no in so-called protected waters. But so I did some digging and it turns out that bottom trawling is currently happening in 60% of the EU's protected waters, and in the UK that number is as high as 90%. But here's the good news. Recently, Germany applied to the European Commission for stronger protections in its marine protected areas in the North Sea, and a fishing association tried to block the move in court and lost. The court ruled that EU member states not only have the right but the legal duty to shield protected waters from destructive fishing, setting an important precedent and proving the EU already has the legal tools needed, and now it's up to governments to step up. Promisingly, momentum against bottom trawling is steadily building around the world. For example, the UK recently announced its ambition to outlaw the practice across 41 marine protected areas covering 30,000 square kilometres. And French Polynesia went even further, announcing a full ban on extractive practices such as bottom trawling across its entire 5 million square kilometre exclusive economic zone. Behind sea otters' insanely cute appearance and behaviours, they play a crucial role in maintaining the health of coastal ecosystems, and maybe the best example or clearest example of just how effective they can be is what's happening right now on the coast of California. So unlike seals, sea otters lack blubber and instead rely on their turbocharged metabolisms to stay warm, but to do so they need to eat roughly 25% of their body weight every day. Lucky for them, California's coastal waters are crawling with invasive European green crabs. The crabs arrived in the 1980s, and at the time sea otters were still absent from much of their former range after almost being wiped out by fur hunters. And with the lack of predators, the numbers of the adaptive crustaceans exploded to the point where their burrowing and hunting was starting to have a real impact on ecosystems such as the salt marshes and seagrass meadows of Elkhorn Slough. That was until the 90s, when otters naturally recolonised the slough and found an endless supply of food to help them settle into their new home. It's estimated that the 120 otters now living in the slough devour as many as 120,000 of the crabs each year, and their work is completely changing the ecosystem. See, with fewer crabs, the erosion of the salt marshes drastically reduced, and the number of these tiny sea slugs was able to recover, allowing them to resume their crucial role of eating algae off the seagrass and allowing the plants to photosynthesize. And the reduction of the crabs has also made it worthwhile for scientists to begin transplanting seagrass into bare areas of the slough, and in just 3 years the new meadows have grown by 8,500%. And all of this is really incredible news for all of us, as seagrass meadows and salt marshes can store carbon up to 50 times faster than terrestrial forests, and they can lock it up in the seabed for potentially millennia if they stay healthy and intact. And last but definitely not least, for our final story, we're hopping across the globe to Albania, where these two legends helped save the last truly wild river in Europe. At the moment, around 1.2 million dams, weirs and other barriers are choking Europe's rivers. And as you'd expect, this in turn has resulted in widespread ecological issues such as a 94% decrease in freshwater migratory fish species since the 70s. And somehow throughout the centuries, the wild Vjosa River, which runs from the Greek mountains to the coast of Albania, has resisted attempts to be controlled and now is the last of its kind on the continent. However, that almost changed when the Albanian government wanted to build 45 dams along the Vjosa and its tributaries, a plan that wasn't communicated to the surrounding villages which had acted as stewards of the river for centuries. But that's where Bessie and Olsi came in. The pair founded an NGO called Eco Albania as a way to unite activists, scientists and the local communities fighting to see the waterway permanently protected in a national park. But the pair didn't stop there. See, Eco Albania also helped establish a new research centre to allow scientists to study the waterway and gather evidence of just how much damage the proposed dams would do. And whilst doing so, the researchers recorded 45 species that had never been found in the country before, and 4 of them were entirely new to science, providing irrefutable proof of the ecosystem's value. And after a decade of fighting, they won. In March 2023, Albania established the 31,000-acre Vjosa Wild River National Park, and Greece followed suit and protected the river's headwaters in its territory. And just recently, in recognition of the incredible work of Bessie, Olsi and everyone involved, the pair were awarded the Goldman Prize, which is often referred to as the Green Nobel Prize. And now I could be wrong, but someone that I walked past did say that he saw some emu tracks, and I think it could be these. You can see him just scurrying across and down here, down to a little creek and whatnot. Maybe, again, I'll try to put an image up. So that's all the good news that I could squeeze into this good news hike, but if you did enjoy, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next dose, and click here to watch the last one that I did, which was down in the stunning Murrumarang National Park.